have you seen the show World War II in color on Netflix?
Oh my god!
Have you seen the whole thing?
Yeah, the whole thing.
Okay. So
guys, you have to check it out.
You
World
have
War
to check
II
it
in
out.
color.
So it's really good. What's nice is they have historians, like German historians, and it feels fair. Like it feels very objective and fair until episode 7.
Dresden.
Episode 7 is about Dresden.
Yeah.
And I'm watching this episode and I can't believe what I'm seeing. All of a sudden, the show gets so political and so pro-Nazi
Yeah.
that I couldn't believe it.
So, yeah. When you wrote this down on the agenda today, I had no idea what you were talking about. And now it's all coming back to me.
You start seeing it when... so the episode is about
the
bombing of Dresden.
Yeah.
When 25,000 Germans died, the British bombed with special bombs and killed, and with firestorms, they killed 25,000 Germans. And this is pretty far in the war. And the reason is that the Germans they lost practically already, but they refused to surrender.
Absolutely refuse.
And
Maybe
every
there's
day
the Battle
more
of the Bulge where they push into the line.
They lost by now. They lost. They're doomed, but they won't surrender. And Allied soldiers keep dying for nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in this episode, suddenly the German historian, who up until now was very interesting and objective, first of all, he starts to speak in German instead of in English, which is interesting.
Really?
For the first time. Yeah, for the first time on the show, he
that.
speaks German.
Okay.
And suddenly he gets you realize he's not on our side, this historian. He's on the Nazi side. He tries to...
You think so?
Yeah, I felt... That's what it's like relatively, right? He doesn't start to support Hitler, but he justifies... He's for the first time, you feel he's more German than he is a historian.
Well, let's get to the Dresden part.
Okay.
So describe what happens there. In the documentary.
In the documentary, they portray it like essentially there was this guy, this British general, the bomber, right? It's his nickname. And he was crazy. He liked bombing towns. And without any apparent reason, he decided to bomb Dresden, which was an industrial city. Where part of the Nazi war machine was there. But it made no sense in retrospect strategically, and his bombings killed so many innocent civilians, and it was in vain.
Yeah.
And how bad were the Allies to do that, and how they're not innocent, right? Because they did that.
Yeah. So I don't think the document... I think that's the picture that's painted,
yes.
Right? The documentary doesn't come out and say that all these people died in vain.
Yeah, of course not.
But that's
the art of the documentary.
They paint the picture by, I think, describing the horrifying scenes that must have taken place in Dresden during the bombing, which is like these flames engulfing the city to a point where the city becomes basically like the inside of an oven, and they talk about how people are melting basically on the streets.
Yeah. And they're emphasizing the human tragedy and also judging the actions of the Allies in retrospect, which is so easy, right?
Yeah.
In retrospect, we know maybe that it wasn't as useful as other things they could have done, but obviously you didn't know it back then.
But what struck me about the Dresden thing, and this might be what you're about to say.
The ending.
Okay, no.
In the ending, they dedicate the episode for the first time to the 25 deaths.
25,000 people who died
in Dresden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was no episode dedicated to the 6 million people.
No, episode 8, I didn't watch it.
There were no episodes dedicated to the 6 million people, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
They did talk about the Holocaust, but that's
8.
what struck me, is that they talk about the Holocaust, but they don't, I don't feel like they obviously talk about the Holocaust and the horrifying things that happen, but it's almost given the same weight. right? I mean, they dedicate about 20 minutes of an episode, I think, to Dresden, and they dedicate another 20 minutes of an episode to... Not the whole episode is about Dresden, is it?
Yeah.
The whole episode's about Dresden? So there wasn't a whole episode about the Holocaust.
Okay.
Which was horrifying to me. That, like, 25,000 German citizens get this entire episode, which is... Because the series is World War II, the greatest events of World War II or something. It's not the greatest battles, right? It's not even the greatest, like, I don't know, military actions or anything. So it's not military-oriented, in which case you would say, okay, this wasn't a military operation, the Holocaust. It was something else, okay? But it's the greatest events of World War II. And if you don't think the Holocaust is one of the greatest events of World War II, then that's just...
So I was so infuriated, and I have 2 points to make before we move on about this episode. First of all, the first thing I did when I saw the dedication, I Googled how many German citizens were a part of the Nazi Party, were members of the Nazi Party in the year 45. Mm-hmm. And the number is 1 of every 10 Germans was a member of the party. Okay? So statistically, out of the 25,000 deaths, 2,500 people were Nazis, members of the party. So you dedicated your episode to 2,500 Nazis, essentially. Okay? That's the first point. The second point is they blamed the British. And this, to me, is so morally wrong because here's what the German historian doesn't get, and apparently the directors of the TV show don't get.
Yeah.
If people died in vain, German people died in vain, it wasn't the British's responsibility or fault. It was Hitler's fault. They are victims of Hitler, not of the British. The British,
first and foremost,
the British didn't want to bomb Dresden. They didn't. If it were up to them, they wouldn't fight. They would stay in their island and drink tea. They didn't want that.
Yeah.
It's not like Hitler made them do it.
Yeah.
You know, it reminds me of us attacking Gaza, right? And it's the same principle. Like when there's a murderous dictator who doesn't succumb to reality and he forces you to action and people die, unfortunately, it's only the responsibility of the crazy dictator.
Yeah.
And you can't, and so what the TV show is doing...
You know, people might make mistakes. You can argue that Dresden was a tactical mistake.
Right.
That we shouldn't have bombed
But they
Dresden,
say it was,
and there were too many innocent lives
They say
lost.
they knew it was in vain, and yet they did it because they were bloodthirsty.
That's a ridiculous idea.
It's ridiculous.
That's a ridiculous idea.
So shame on you, World War II. Shame on you,
really.
Netflix.
Although it is hard not to recommend the series because it's just freaking
well made,
unbelievable. No, it's not even that's well made. It's just like bringing this footage to color.
Yeah.
And then I mean, like, you don't have to do much to make that story and history compelling,
right?
Especially if you have color footage, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, if you're a history buff, you could just, like, it's just, you know, drink that stuff up. It's just so engaging.